She thought it was just another night shift at a lonely roadside diner, until two cops stormed in, accusing a quiet trucker of a serious crime. When she stood between them and the man, she had no idea who he really was, or what would happen the next morning. What makes a stranger risk everything to protect another? The bell above the door chimed, the sound sharp against the hum of the diner's old refrigerator. Megan glanced up from behind the counter, where she'd been reorganizing packets of sugar and stirring her third cup of stale coffee. The shift had been slow, just a couple of long-haul drivers and a waitress with a dream too expensive to reach. The man who stepped in didn't say a word. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with deep lines carved into his face like roads on a map. His hair was gray at the temples, his hands thick and calloused. He moved stiffly, as though every step carried a memory. His eyes scanned the diner briefly before settling on the booth farthest from the door, the one closest to the window and farthest from the world. Megan watched him sit. He didn't look up when she approached, just nodded when she asked, "Coffee? Black," he muttered, voice low and worn. She poured without asking a second question. Her eyes flicked to the corner of his jacket, the faded outline of a patch long removed. She'd seen enough of them to recognize the ghost of a military insignia. Army, most likely. The way he kept his back straight even when slouch said as much. As she placed the coffee cup on the table, she noticed how his hand trembled slightly when he reached for it. Not from age, from something else. Something deeper. Before she could say anything, the door burst open again. Two police officers walked in fast, purposeful. One was a younger guy, early 30s maybe, with a buzz cut and a clipboard already in hand. The other was older, heavy-set, with a permanent scowl on his face. They didn't look at Megan. Their eyes went straight to the man in the booth. "Sir," the younger one said, walking straight toward him, "we need to ask you a few questions." Michael looked up slowly. His body didn't move, but Megan could see the tension rising. In his jaw, his shoulders, his knuckles whitening around the coffee cup. "What's this about?" Megan asked, stepping from behind the counter. The older cop turned toward her, clearly annoyed. "Not your business, ma'am. Step back." Megan didn't move. She looked at the man again. His name tag said Michael. She hadn't even noticed it before, sewn onto the pocket of his faded work shirt. His eyes weren't on the officers. They were somewhere else, far away. His breathing was shallow, and his hand now trembled harder. The younger officer spoke again. "Your truck. You were parked westbound off 63 about 2 hours ago?" Michael said nothing. "We have a report of a rig matching that description hauling unauthorized medical materials," the older cop said. "Need you to come with us." "No," Megan said, quickly and more firmly than she expected. "That's not right." Both officers turned toward her now, blinking in unison like she'd interrupted a script. She stepped forward. "He's been here less than 10 minutes. He came in for coffee. He hasn't done anything." "Ma'am," the older cop warned, "you don't know this man." "I know enough." Her voice was steady, but her heart pounded. Michael finally spoke. "I don't want trouble." "You're not causing it," Megan said, more to him than to the police. The younger officer hesitated. "Look, we're just trying to confirm a report." "Then confirm it," she said. "But don't come in here throwing accusations without evidence." The tension thickened like steam. The older cop took a step closer, but Michael didn't flinch this time, because Megan was already in between them. She didn't know why she was doing it. Maybe because she saw something in his eyes, something that reminded her of her father, the way he used to go quiet in crowded rooms, the way he'd leave the TV on but never watch it, the way he disappeared slowly, not all at once, and no one noticed until it was too late. The younger officer finally pulled out a tablet, checked something, and frowned. "Truck plate doesn't match," he muttered. "It's not him." Silence. Then, with a grunt, the older officer turned. "Let's go." They left without another word. Megan stood frozen for a moment. Her hands were trembling now too. Michael exhaled. "Thanks." She nodded, then slid into the booth across from him. "They shouldn't have come at you like that." He didn't respond right away. Then, "They always do." He reached for his coffee again. His hand was steadier now. "You're military?" she asked gently. "Used to be," he said. "Not sure what I am now." Megan nodded slowly. She understood more than she said. Her dad's dog tags still hung on a nail above her bed. She used to ask him about the war until she learned to stop asking. "I'm Megan," she said. "Michael." That was all. She let the silence sit. Sometimes silence said more than questions ever could. Eventually, he stood to leave. "You're brave," he said. "I'm tired," she replied. And for a moment, they both smiled. A tired, quiet smile that people who've seen too much tend to share. He left without another word. Megan stood behind the counter, the coffee pot in her hand, staring out at the empty lot. His truck was still there, engine humming low. She wondered how far he had left to go. Then she glanced at the tip jar, not the regular one. The other one. The one she kept hidden under the counter. The one that said nursing school in fading pink Sharpie. She reached for it, ran her fingers over the glass. Sometimes it's not the big moments that change your life. It's the quiet ones. The moments when you decide to step forward when no one else does. That night, she walked home under the dim streetlights, shoes soaked from a surprise drizzle, heart beating loud in her chest. She didn't feel like a hero. She felt small, shaken, uncertain. But something inside her told her this wasn't the end of it. And she was right. The morning air was cooler than usual when Megan arrived at the diner. Dew clung to the windows like fogged memories, and the parking lot was still empty except for a police cruiser parked sideways near the entrance. Inside, the overhead lights flickered like they always did. Not quite broken, not quite working right, and the smell of burnt bacon clung to the air. As she pushed through the door, she saw them. The same two officers from the night before. They were standing awkwardly near the counter, speaking in hushed tones to Linda, the owner and cook, who raised her eyebrows when she saw Megan enter. The older cop turned toward her first. His expression was strained, as if apologies were foreign currency he rarely spent. The younger one stepped forward. "Miss Megan, right?" She nodded, walking slowly toward them, wiping her hands on her apron even though she'd just arrived. "We're here to clarify," the younger officer said. "Last night about that trucker, Michael. His rig was not the one we were looking for. There was a mix-up in the report." "I know," she said plainly. "You were wrong." The older officer shifted uncomfortably. The trucks were the same make and color. Plate was one letter off. "We didn't mean to." "But you did," she interrupted. "You stormed in here like he was guilty before you even asked a question. And you scared the hell out of someone who's already carrying more than you can see." A silence hung between them. Neither officer offered more than a stiff nod. Megan didn't want more. What she wanted was outside. She turned to leave. "Wait," the younger officer called out. "We're sorry." Megan didn't stop. She just nodded without turning back and walked out. It was Frank who told her the rest. He was already seated at his usual booth when she returned. A man in his late 70s with a faded baseball cap that said 101st Airborne and hands that trembled only when they were still. He didn't say much most days, just ordered black coffee and toast, butter on the side. But this morning, as she refilled his cup, he looked up at her. "You got a lot of fire in you, kid," he said. "Your old man'd be proud." Megan blinked. She hadn't heard, "Your old man," in a while. "You knew my dad?" "Yeah. We didn't serve together, but we were at the same VFW post years ago." He didn't talk much either. Megan sat across from him. The diner was still quiet, the kind of lull that lets real conversations rise. "What do you know about that trucker, Michael?" Frank leaned back, folding his weathered hands over his stomach. "Served 2 tours. First in Iraq, then Afghanistan. Drove convoys through territory most wouldn't set foot in. Saved some lives. Lost more. Came back different. Like most of us. Why would he stay on the road?" Frank looked out the window for a moment. "Because it's quieter out there. And because sometimes, silence is the only thing that doesn't argue back." After asking around among drivers, she finally found Michael parked on the edge of town, just past the last gas station, near a field that had long since gone wild. His truck, a long, dark blue Peterbilt with dust-coated chrome, sat quietly in the shade of an old oak tree. Michael was on the back bumper, elbows on knees, staring out across the open grass. Megan parked her beat-up Honda beside the rig and got out slowly. He didn't look at her right away, just gave a slight nod. "I brought pie," she said, holding up a small box. He smirked faintly. "I didn't peg you for the follow strangers to their trucks type." "I'm not," she said, handing him the box. "But I figured you might talk more when you're not being harassed by cops or watched by locals." He opened the box, saw the slice of apple pie inside, and gave a slow, approving nod. "You were right to step in." "I wasn't sure," she admitted. "But you looked like you were somewhere else, like my dad used to. I couldn't just stand there." He nodded again, this time more slowly. "You reminded me of someone." They sat in silence for a while. Birds chirped in the tree above. The sound of a passing freight train echoed in the distance. "You still serving?" she asked quietly. "No," he said. "Retired. Honorably. Been driving ever since. Easier to keep moving." She took a breath. "I want to be a nurse. Been saving since I was 19. Every tip, every extra shift. I want to help people like my dad. Like you." Michael looked at her now, really looked. "You already do," he said. Something unspoken passed between them, a fragile understanding formed not from shared experience, but from shared consequence. "Most people don't see it," he added. "What it does to you. The noise that keeps going, even when everything's quiet. It's a strange thing, being grateful to survive and ashamed you did." Megan swallowed hard. "Frank said helping vets can be a lonely road." Michael gave a short laugh. "Frank's not wrong, but it's the only road some of us have left." They sat for a while longer, eating in silence. When she finally stood to leave, Michael stayed behind. He didn't follow her with his eyes, just kept staring into the trees. That night, alone in his sleeper cab, Michael pulled a weathered notepad from under his bunk. He flipped to a blank page and began to write, "Dear Ethan, I don't know if this letter will find you, or if you'd even want to read it. I met someone today, someone who reminded me there's still good out there, still people who see us. Maybe I was wrong to keep running. Maybe it's time to turn around. Dad." He folded the letter slowly, slid it into an envelope, and placed it in the glove box. He didn't start the engine that night. He just sat there, in the dark, listening to the world around him. And the silence didn't feel like punishment. The first thing Megan noticed that morning was the sound. Not birdsong or wind, but engines. Low, steady rumbles layered atop one another like a distant thunderstorm. As she crested the hill near the diner, her foot eased off the gas. She blinked. The parking lot was full. Not just full, overflowing. A line of trucks, side by side, nose to nose, stretched beyond the property onto the shoulder of the road. Kenworths, Freightliners, Macs, old rigs with fading paint and new ones that still shimmered. They sat there like steel monuments, silent, waiting. She parked awkwardly in the gravel, squeezing between a dusty Peterbilt and a milk delivery truck. As she stepped out, the scene struck her like a slow wave. Men and women stood beside their rigs, arms crossed or hands in pockets. They didn't speak much, just nodded at her as she passed. Some were in denim, others in worn leather or safety vests. One wore an old army jacket with a faded 1st Cavalry patch. Another had a prosthetic hand that held a cup of diner coffee like it was sacred. When she reached the door, Linda was standing in the entryway, arms folded, eyes wide. "You throw a party I didn't hear about?" she asked, half joking. "I don't know what this is," Megan replied, but she did. Inside, things were even stranger. A box sat on the counter beside the register. A simple cardboard box, nothing special. Taped to the front was a piece of lined notebook paper. Handwritten, block letters, "For Megan. Dreams matter." Inside the box, envelopes, some stuffed thick with bills, others with coins taped together, a few with checks. No names, no messages, Behind the counter, the humming freezer, broken for nearly a week, was running smooth. Linda pointed toward the back. Guy in a cap came in, asked for a wrench, said he'd take a look. Fixed it in 10 minutes. Didn't charge us. Megan stood frozen. The surreal weight of it pressed down in layers. The trucks, the silence, the generosity. All of it sparked by a single night, by her instinct to stand between a man and his past. Then, the bell above the door rang. She turned. That 2 officers entered again. But this time they weren't posturing. Their shoulders were lower. Their uniforms looked heavier. Behind them walked a woman in her 50s, sharp eyes, gray streak through her hair, a calm authority in her posture. Chief Marla Jensen, the only female chief in 3 counties. "Miss Clark," she said, "could we speak for a moment?" Megan nodded. The chief's voice was low but firm. "They're here to apologize. And to listen. I have a brother with combat PTSD. I know what it looks like." They didn't. The older officer, red-faced and awkward, looked at his boots. Garrett, the younger one, stepped forward. "I've never seen it like that before." The way he froze up. "I thought he was hiding something. I didn't know how to read it." "You don't get trained for this," Megan said. "But maybe you should." He nodded. "I'd like to. Understand better. If that offer to sit with them still stands." She gestured to the largest booth, where 4 truckers were hunched over steaming mugs. "It does." Garrett hesitated only a moment before crossing the room. One of the drivers, a man in his 70s with mirrored sunglasses and a Marine Corps tattoo on his neck, scooted over wordlessly to make room. Garrett sat, stiff at first, but within minutes he was listening. Really listening. Later that morning, the convoy began to thin out. A few drivers tipped their hats to Megan as they left. One handed her a folded brochure, Spring Valley Nursing Program, prepaid application enclosed. Another, a woman with short gray hair and oil-stained coveralls, handed her a tin of cookies and simply said, "Your dad'd be proud." In the quiet afternoon that followed, Megan took a moment to herself. She sat on the counter, her apron folded beside her, the envelope box in her lap. She didn't count the money yet. She didn't need to. Out the window, Michael's rig rolled slowly past. He gave a short wave from the cab, just 2 fingers off the wheel. She smiled and returned the gesture. And in that moment, something settled inside her. This wasn't about charity. It wasn't about pity. It was about being seen and seeing others in return. And sometimes, when you do the right thing with no one watching, the whole world shows up. The jar was still there, right beside the register, beneath the flickering neon open sign, where it had always sat, a scratched-up glass jar with a faded label taped to the front. But the words had changed. It no longer read nursing school. Now it said, "Roadside relief for vets who need a place to breathe." Megan had rewritten it herself. Same black marker, same crooked handwriting, but a new purpose. In the days that followed the convoy, something in the diner shifted. Not visibly, the floor still creaked, the coffee still burned a little, the booths still stuck when you slid in too fast. But it was in the air. The way people spoke softer. The way folks looked each other in the eye. The way silence wasn't so heavy anymore. The truckers didn't stay. Convoys don't. They came, they gave, they listened, and then they disappeared back into the highways, into the cold stretch of miles that defined their lives. One by one, their rigs rumbled away, taillights shrinking into the distance. But they left traces behind. Cards, tools, books, cash tucked into salt shakers, and one steel thermos that never stopped refilling itself. Michael was the last to go. She saw him from the kitchen window, standing by his truck like he'd done 100 times before, leaning against the chrome, looking at the horizon like it owed him something. When Megan stepped out, he didn't turn. He just held something out behind him. A small envelope, yellowed at the edges, creased like it had been folded and unfolded too many times. She took it. He climbed into the cab and started the engine. And like that, he was gone. Megan stood in the dust as it settled, her fingers tightening around the envelope, heart pounding. She waited until she was alone to open it. Inside was a patch, frayed but clean. a unit insignia, the same one from the sleeve of Michael's jacket. Folded beneath it was a torn piece of notebook paper. The handwriting was rough, almost angry in how carefully it had been written. You reminded me what I was fighting for. Keep reminding people. M. Megan sat in the back booth that night and cried. Not loudly, not for long, just enough to feel real. Just enough to let the quiet hold her for a minute. She applied to the nursing program that week. There was a short essay required. She titled it, "The Night a Convoy Saved Me Too." The words came quickly, not just about Michael but about her dad, about growing up watching silence swallow a man whole, about learning what it means to stand between someone and the thing they're afraid of, even when you don't fully understand it. She hit submit before she could second-guess herself. Old Frank, for his part, had started changing too. He still told stories at the counter, sipping his black coffee and poking at biscuits. But they were different stories now. Fewer jungle patrols. Fewer lost names. He told stories about Megan. How she stood up when it counted. How she looked a man in the eye and saw past the noise. How she was building something new, right there behind the pie case and chipped mugs. You know, he said one afternoon to a stranger passing through, I've seen a lot of folks fall through cracks, but that girl, she builds bridges. Officer Garrett showed up one Saturday morning in jeans and a hoodie, a clipboard tucked under one arm. Vet Center downtown needs volunteers, he said, a little nervous, like she might mock him. She didn't. Instead, she smiled and handed him a slice of pecan pie on the house. Bring that energy with you. They'll appreciate it. He stayed for 2 hours, listening to Frank tell stories about supply trucks and jungle mud. And he came back every week after that. As for Megan, she started putting together something small but steady. The roadside relief jar became a shelf, then a wallboard flyers for vet centers, local shelters, food programs, job contacts for truckers passing through. She set up a binder behind the counter with resources. Frank donated a portable phone charger rack. Linda let her put up a corkboard by the restrooms labeled, "Need something? Take it. Got something? Leave it." It wasn't much, but it was real. One night, a young driver, barely 20, nervous hands and sleepless eyes, came in, saw the board, and stared at it for a long time. Then he pulled out a folded paper from his jacket and pinned it up. Megan peeked at it after he left. It was a handwritten note. Thanks for reminding me I'm not the only one out here. The diner never got fancy. The booths still stuck. The coffee still burned. But people stayed longer now. Not because of the food, but because the place remembered them. And because in a world that moved too fast and forgot too easily, there was still a little jar by the counter, filled not just with coins, but with stories, scars, and reminders that kindness was not a weakness. It was a legacy. This story reminds us that kindness doesn't need a uniform. It just needs courage. What would you have done in Megan's place? Would you have stepped forward or stayed silent? If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to embrace the journey for more stories that celebrate everyday heroes. See you in the next video.